Try to think what it was like to be a game developer in the 90s. You have this successful franchise and everyone eagerly awaits the next installment. However, there's a catch. This new technology known as 3D. All the other major players have made this leap across dimensions, so now everyone wants to see your series do the same. How do you translate your simple 2D game into a way that makes sense? I think about this more than I would like to admit. It must have been a Herculean task back in the day, and that was no different for Sega developers when bringing the Blue Blur to 3D. Even though it was late to the party, Sonic Adventure was massive when it was released. And with that, a new gameplay style was created, creatively titled the Adventure Formula. They would refine and build on Adventure, making 3 more games, being Adventure 2, Heroes, and 06. These games saw you control Sonic and friends in what are basically 2D levels adapted to 3D. Some games were more based on exploration and had the 2D philosophy of multiple routes, while others were more linear. It's like the other platformers you could find at the time, but with extreme speed and attitude. I love them. After the slight disappointment 06 brought Sega, they would go back to the drawing board and strike back with something new. Something that brought Sonic's main selling point to the forefront: speed. This brought a new gameplay style called the Boost Formula. Now, with a simple press of a button, you go flying. Thus, the level design was changed to fit these controls, based on more reaction time and maintaining your boost. The best levels even include multiple pathways and shortcuts that the best players can take to reduce their time. I also love these games, and Shadow Generations proved that this style still has potential. This is the era we're in now, with boost games being Unleashed, Colors, Generations, Forces, the Cyberspace levels and Frontiers, and Shadow Generations. The question I always ask myself, just like other Sonic fans, is which style is better? I like them both, but that's a cop-out answer. Which one do I enjoy playing more? Which fits Sonic better? And would I rather have a new Boost game over Sonic Adventure 3? Well, that's what I'm looking to accomplish in this video. First I'll look at the pros for each game style, then the cons, and then determine which era of Sonic reigns supreme. Before I do that though, I am legally bound by the Council of Dream to ask you to please like and subscribe. I heard it's free and there are take-backsies, so if you change your mind, you can do so. I promise I won't judge. Also, this video is my opinion, and if you have a different one, which I know you do, please tell me about it respectfully in the comments below. Also, this video doesn't cover Sonic Dream Team because I haven't played it, and I don't want to get Apple Arcade, nor do I want to play a Sonic game on my phone. That's a win for Mac user Jared, who made a free trial and played on his MacBook. Okay, that's enough. Let's get into it. Starting with the adventure games, it is immediately apparent that this is the most responsive Sonic has ever felt naturally. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 is the best Sonic controls in any of the 3D games. It doesn't matter if you're walking or running at full speed, you always have complete control over where he goes. Speaking of going fast, these are the best games that implement the dreaded M word: momentum. While it's not as perfect as the Genesis originals, it still feels really good. When going downhill, you pick up speed the way you're supposed to, and mixed with the broken spin dash in some games, finding intentional and unintentional shortcuts is so much fun. Speaking of the classics, the level design takes some notes from these games, because they can be open-ended. Sonic Adventure and Heroes has some of the best and most open levels in Sonic history. Even Sonic 06 has fantastic level design. It's just everything else about it. Adventure 2's levels are more linear, but were built with speedrunning in mind. Either way, most of these levels were made to be sped through, and pulling off risky tricks to save time feels extremely rewarding. If a Sonic game were just non-stop Sonic levels, then the game would be over in 2 to 4 hours. So a lot of games do something to pad out the runtime, and I like what the adventure games did, for the most part. They give you multiple characters to play, each with their own playstyle and gimmick. The best example is Sonic Adventure 2, where there are 3 types of gameplay. Sonic and Shadow stages, where you go through as fast as possible, Knuckles and Rouge's stages, where you embark on a treasure hunt, and Tails and Eggman stages, where you operate a gun-wielding death machine. I enjoy these most of the time, and think they switch up the gameplay enough without ruining what makes the game a Sonic adventure. Project 06, once again, proved that even this could have been good if given the proper time to develop. Although, I do prefer the Sonic Adventure and 06 route of playing a single character's campaign. If I don't like a playstyle, I could go on ahead and get it over with, instead of Sonic's next stage being locked behind Death Chamber. Ugh. Finally, I want to touch on the adventure game's way of storytelling. I was the kid that watched the same video by different members of the Vanoss crew just to see their perspective. So I love being able to get this in game. Using Sonic Adventure as a reference, if you play Sonic's story, you get to see everything from his perspective. So when he separates from Tails and you play his respective story, you get everything up to that point, plus seeing what he was up to while they were separated. I love that stuff and wish that games would do that more. Granted, some characters didn't add much to the plot and could have been cut out completely, but I digress. Once you beat everyone's story, you unlock a final story that epically concludes the game. This was so awesome, and I miss it so much because it genuinely felt like you were at the end of this huge adventure. And that is just the tip of the ice cap zone, which is why I think the adventure games are so good. But let's see how the boost games stack up. This should go without saying, but man, you go fast in these games. We were always told Sonic was the fastest thing alive, and we got to see it in cutscenes and animations, but never in gameplay. That changed with Sonic Unleashed, where you could reach top speed with the literal push of a button. Because you move so freaking fast, they couldn't have the adventure style levels. So they made them longer, filled them with obstacles you must react to at top speed, and high-stress shortcuts to shave off those precious seconds. To truly appreciate these levels, you have to replay them repeatedly to learn the obstacle layout, the fastest route, and what shortcuts to take. In my opinion, this can be said about every Sonic game, but this is no more apparent with the boost games. I talked about how good it felt to pull off tricks and shortcuts in the adventure games, but here is where that feeling peace. You move so fast that you don't have time to take in everything on your first run. But when you come back and see that hidden pathway, but requiring a super sketchy jump, you take it, it skips some of the level, and you feel so freaking cool doing it. The boost games are filled with level designs like this. It truly feels like you become Sonic the Hedgehog. The levels are highly replayable, and it feels so rewarding to return to a stage, find a path you didn't know existed, smash your personal record, go back, perfect your run, smash that record too. When you get that stage down to your absolute limit, oh, it feels good. It helps a lot that Sonic controls well too, for the most part. It is nowhere near as good as Adventure or Adventure 2, but it's suitable for these top speeds. No matter how fast you're going, you are in control. The issues start when the game slows down, but we'll get to that later. Frontiers is the best Sonic has felt since Adventure 2, mainly because it's entirely customizable. Even then, that's in the open zone part of the game. They remove all customization when in the cyberspace levels for some reason. Either way, boost gameplay feels so rewarding and highly replayable, and it makes you look cool for pulling it off. It is a worthy competitor to the adventure formula, so let's see where that style falls flat. If there is one thing the adventure games are known for, it's their jank. Sometimes, these games feel like they were put together by duct tape, spit, and hope. Playing them casually, or not, will result in glitches in every section. Sometimes these unintended oversights are fun and can add to the experience. Others get millions of views on YouTube. Some of the gimmicks, actually most of the gimmicks, are not fun and will ruin a level. I can respect that Sega tried to make these stages unique with their own little thing, but I would argue that Sonic himself is a gimmick. He goes fast, it's his whole thing, so I'm not a fan when I have to constantly switch gravity. Why did there have to be a level in Sonic Adventure where you play pinball to collect rings?
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
They better not bring that back in any way.
Aw, dang it!
This level literally encourages you to immediately fall down, so you could go to the sewers and play an actual Sonic level. Something else these games never got was the camera. Oh my goodness! Sometimes you have to fight the camera more than playing the actual game. If you stay on the beaten path, then it's okay. You still have to fight it sometimes though. But if you go on an alternate route or explore other parts of the stage, it can be truly horrendous. Don't get me started on Knuckles and Rouge's stages from Adventure 1 and 2. The camera could be the worst part of the stage, depending on if it's on a time limit in claustrophobic hallways or set in space. Did anyone play these levels and think they were fun? The adventure games also had this weird thing. Literally every action but jump was on one button. I understand why they did this, to keep the gameplay as simple as possible, like the classics. But they created the opposite problem. It is incredibly janky and can lead to many times where you wanted to light speed dash but somersaulted off the edge. While Adventure 1 and 2 are fantastic and some of my favorite games of all time, that's only half of the adventure games. Heroes is the definition of it's okay. The level design is fantastic, except you. But the game is drugged down significantly by the slippery physics, gimmicks, and how utterly broken it is. You must play the same exact levels in the same order 4 times to unlock the final story. Other games aren't like this. They might be the same level, but there's always a spin, like it being a different gameplay style, but not Heroes. The only difference in these levels is how long you play them, which for Team Sonic and Dark can be a long time. The exception is Team Chaotix, where you must complete a mission, usually finding a set number of something. And this is even worse! I like Heroes, but man, it has flaws. And then, the less said about Sonic 06 the better. You know how bad it is, I know how bad it is. The only thing I can add is that there was so much untapped potential in this game, which is finally getting unearthed by Project 06. Go play that. It's so fun. Honestly, I can see where these negative aspects can turn people off from the adventure games, but I still love them nonetheless. But how do they compare to the boost games? Well, for one, each game has its own barrier to entry, but is overall not newcomer friendly. Sonic Colors and Forces are the best choices for not being thrown into the deep end. Colors because it's slower paced and more focused on platforming than speed, and Forces because it's Forces. A baby could hold forward on the control stick and beat it. The best boost games, though, take a lot of getting used to. Where you move so fast and the stages are based on reaction time, a newcomer will constantly replay levels and smash into the same walls and enemies over and over to get better, which some people won't like. On the other end of the spectrum, some levels can feel like they're boost to win, especially if you're not going for the best time or doing it in the flashiest fashion. If you're trying to simply beat the level, you'll come to a complete stop when that wall reaches your face, or just hold the boost button and win. On some levels, I'm looking at you, actually, this is all about you. is nothing but a hallway where you literally have to do nothing but hold the button. When you're not in a boost section, you're in a slow 2D section that doesn't control well at all. Sonic was meant to go fast, so if you're taking it slow in the slightest, then have fun fighting him because he doesn't know what the word precise means. Plus, he drops like a rock and doesn't carry speed when you jump, which feels really weird. These sections can take up quite a bit of game time too, so I'm not the biggest fan. While the boost games don't have as many in-level gimmicks as the adventure games, they make up for the actual gimmick of the game. To make up for the Sonic portion of these games being so short, each one adds a game-wide gimmick. Unleashed adds the Hedgehog and Sun and Moon medals, Colors adds Wisp power-ups and focuses on platforming, Generations adds classic Sonic and required challenges, and so on and so forth. Even with this, all but Unleashed can be beaten in 4 hours or less. They are extremely short. Unleashed feels bloated in comparison because of its mandatory replaying of levels to collect medals and super long and unfun Hedgehog stages. This is going to sound weird, so let me explain. These games don't have the same sense of speed that the adventure games had that made them so fun. And don't get me wrong, it's thrilling to reach top speed at the push of a button, but going top speed and maintaining it in Sonic Adventure felt so satisfying. Speaking of something I miss, it's the dreaded M word, momentum. These games would be significantly improved if you could carry your speed in jumps or be able to make insane jumps if you had enough momentum built up. I recently replayed Sonic Frontiers for the first time since release, and this time with a physics mod. And I thought the mod wasn't working because this was how the game played, right? Nope. The first time I played Frontiers, it was an easy 6.5 or 7 out of 10 game for me. But with this mod, it skyrocketed to one of my favorite Sonic games of all time. It is so fun to zoom around the map and make death-defying jumps. The game is fine without this mod, except for in the cyberspace levels. The cyberspace levels suck without a physics mod. You move so slow, your homing attack is so slow. You drop like a rock, and every time you jump, a strong gust of wind blows back towards you. Rubbing salt in the wound is 90% of the levels are taken from previous games, making you remember how good they once were and making you want to play them instead. And then, these cyberspace levels only have 4 themes, so while you're playing these wildly unique Sonic levels, you're doing it in Green Hill Zone, or Sky Sanctuary, or Chemical Plant, or just a random city. Finally, the stories in the boost games, quality and presentation, in my opinion, have taken a hit. They don't do the single story from multiple perspectives, instead having one story from Sonic's perspective. This isn't bad, it's just that I prefer the way that the adventure games handled telling their story. And also, I'm more of a fan of the overly dramatic and convoluted stories from Adventure 1 and 2, while the boost games have taken a more straightforward approach. But that's all subjective. So, with all that being said, and all this rambling done, which one do I prefer? I'm unsure if I made it obvious, but I am more of a fan of the adventure games. Don't get me wrong, I freaking love the boost games. It is truly neck and neck with me. A part of that could be nostalgia too, with Adventure 2 being my first Sonic game. My top 3D Sonic games are Adventure, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and Adventure 2. And while I'm not sure if this is cheating, but this is my video, so I'll say it anyway. The Unleashed project. Unleashed's daytime stages are some of my favorite boost stages, so just playing them and removing the fluff is truly a great time. So that's enough for me, and now it's your turn. Which style do you prefer? How come? Let me know in the comments below. Also like, subscribe, and hit the notification.